So hi, hello, welcome to the October vlog. I'm just assuming that this vlog is gonna last me for the entire month of October because that seems to be about where my energy level is for editing videos. So, maybe another 45-minute vlog. Thanks for watching. If you notice, if you watch my videos, this is hopefully a little bit better quality than it usually is. I got a ring light, which you can see if I tilt my eyes up. There's a ring light back there. Hadn't quite figured out how I'm gonna deal with that when I film my normal videos because they're filmed on a camera that doesn't have a flip screen, so I can't like see that if I tilt my head like this, suddenly there's just like a terrible reflection and like, oh no. But for doing the vlogs, it's kind of nice, and I have a selfie stick, so this might be a little bit bouncier than normal. I don't know. I have to figure out all my equipment, so it might get better and it might get worse before it gets better. We'll live with that, but it looks like it's not quite as low quality as it usually is, but we'll see. I guess we'll see when I edit it, if it's just like, oh no, this looks terrible, just like always. But I am quite excited. Those were birthday gifts for me, because yay, I deserve them. And I also have new bookshelves, which is very, very exciting. I want to do a reorganization video, or I guess not reorganize, but like a bookshelf, not building them because they're built, but like, how do I phrase this? Putting all my books onto them. I want to film that whenever I do that, but I know it's just gonna take a minute because like all my books are in this room and they're just like in piles on my dresser, like I showed in the last vlog, and I have to move them all into the other room and then like put them on the bookshelves, and it's gonna take a minute. So I'm too lazy to do that today, but I'm hoping sometime in the next week or two I'll do it, because I can set my chair up and like have like my lighting and my camera in there and like actually have a good filming setup here, because I have not had a good filming setup in over a year at this point, and it would be nice not to just have like a blank white wall background in all my videos. Like, I'll have bookshelves in my background. That's lovely. That makes me very happy. But it is October 1st, so I suppose I should talk about my October goals. I don't have anything interesting for October goals. Like I did for September, I was like, this is what I plan to do. I did most of it. I just want to kind of keep up with BookTube. Like, do a video every week, post a video every week, I guess, because I started doing that in September a little more, and that made me really happy, because honestly, it's just like returning to a hobby. And watch more BookTube. I definitely want to watch more BookTube, because I watched some in September, but still not loads, and I would like to just get into the habit of watching BookTube being like a regular thing I do. Like, maybe not like every single day, because I am just like busy some days, but like in general I would really like to just have booktubing be like something that I do almost every day or most days, like when I'm not super busy. I think that's it. October's boring. I don't have anything fun planned, but books I'm reading. The two that I'm not really working on and don't necessarily plan to work on this month, although maybe, Dubliners by James Joyce, which has been sitting on my TBR, or on my currently reading, for like over a year at this point. I just don't have a copy of it, and I need to go get one from the library, and I just like don't feel like doing that right now. And Splendid in the Vial by Erik Larson, which is about Winston Churchill, which I do plan to read at some point, and I do have. It's just like, I don't feel like prioritizing that right now either. So those are probably still going to be on my currently reading at the end of the month. And then the audiobook that I am listening to is Boy Erased by Garrard Conley. It's a memoir of him growing up in a very religious family in the Bible Belt, being gay, and he went to conversion therapy, and it's also about him being raped, and it's like just a memoir, honestly, about him. And it's okay so far. I don't super love it, and I don't think it was a great choice for an audiobook for me, because it is like kind of non-linear, and he kind of just like talks about whatever he feels like talking about at any given point, which is more okay for me in a book, but I do have a little bit of trouble following it in the audiobook. And then my ebook that I'm currently reading is Transgender History by Stryker. She's a trans woman, and it's just like transgender history. It starts like post World War II, I think. I'm really not, I'm like 50 pages into 600 pages on my ebook version, which is on my phone, so like I have no idea how many real pages that translates to. Not that far in. I'm still sort of in the introduction where she's kind of just like defining terms and stuff, and it's a little more academic than I expected it to be. Like, it's not bad, it's just like A, a little bit dry, and B, a little bit like hard to follow just in terms of like the writing style, because it does kind of read like an academic book, which isn't inherently bad. It's just like I don't read a lot of like academic text anymore. And it is like I'm having to do a lot of rereading, just like rereading sentences and all of that, because it's like I'm not used to just the language and the style and like the words she uses. It's just like she uses like unnecessarily big words, which is just like an academic thing, and I wish people would just write in like plain speech, you know? But I'm hoping the information will be like really interesting and worthwhile, because like that's really why I'm reading the book. So, you know, that is what it is. And then the two books that I am currently reading physically, the first is kind of a back burner book. Not super back burner, but like it's gonna be the next thing I prioritize. I swear to God, this month I'm going to read this book. That is The Last Wish by Andrzej Safkowski. I'm still just like 2 chapters into this, 2 short stories into this. I never prioritize it. I never like sit down and be like, okay, I'm gonna read this now, because there's always something that like, oh, like this is more important, or I have to read this first, or like I'll read this next, and then like it's always just like my next read. And this month, I swear, I'm going to read it, because I want to be done. Like, I want to read this book. It fulfills like 2 of my goals on my 2020 goals, which is an unfortunate list, honestly, but it does fulfill 2. And I'm tired of it sitting here staring at me, and I have to read more of the series too, so it is what it is. And then the other thing that I'm currently reading is Ready Player One by Ernest Cline, which I am buddy reading with Floor from Crazy Book Lady. I've literally just read the prologue. Don't love it so far, honestly. Don't hate it either. It's just one of those things where like it didn't start off well for me, and like I don't know. It doesn't feel like the 80s to me. And I say this as someone who wasn't born then. Like, I don't know anything about what the 80s felt like. I don't know anything about 80s pop culture. But for me, that's kind of the problem, because like so far I know all of the 80s pop culture they referenced, and it's weird to me that I do know it, because I don't know much 80s pop culture, and it kind of makes it feel fake, because I don't know, they're like referencing John Hughes and like Donkey Kong or whatever, and like it's like I know these things, and like I feel like they should be referencing a lot more things that I don't understand, and it's very obvious whenever they're referencing something, so it's not like I'm just missing things. I'm sure I will later in the book, but it's just like so far that's kind of and I don't know. I am just like, I'm really not like big into the story yet. So I don't know. Hopefully it gets better. Again, I'm like 8 pages in or something, so I can't really say anything about this yet. But that is what I'm reading. Those are my October plans, and hopefully, I don't know, the quality looks good. I'm trying to like keep myself kind of low, like not super low, but like if I sit up like this, it's suddenly just like, oh, you can see all the reflection. Like I can't look up at all. I have to like keep looking like slightly down, but I'll figure out how to work the ring light and how to like set up and how to get like the angles and everything right so that it doesn't just like do this, or like potentially I could just film without my glasses on, but like my vision is so bad, so I don't know that that's a great option, but I will figure it out eventually. If you have any like helpful tips for ring lights, especially like with glasses, I know there's like you sit at like an angle or something, but like then it kind of like defeats the purpose, because like my lighting in here is so bad that like then like half my face is just in darkness and not great quality, whereas like over here it's kind of like better. I don't know, I'll figure it out. But if you have any like tips for ring lights, feel free to let me know down below, because I'm still just like playing around with them and everything. The lighting is just not good here, but I'm not going to repark because I've been away from home for 12 hours because I worked a very long shift today and I am tired. I finished Boy Erased by Conley, and that certainly was a book that exists about being gay in the South.
I don't really have anything else to say about it than that. It wasn't very good, but like it wasn't very bad either. It was like everything I have to say about it is vaguely negative, but like I don't really feel negatively towards it. I just really don't care. It's 3 stars. Like, if you want to read a memoir about being gay in the South in like I think the early 2000s, I'm not entirely certain when it was set. My reading comprehension on audiobooks is not great, and that one was an audiobook. But I finished it. I kind of expected it to be more about conversion therapy, because that's what I heard most about it, was that, like, he went to conversion therapy, and there definitely is some of that, and he definitely went, but he was there for, like, less than 2 weeks as an outpatient, only going, like, 5 days a week, so, like, he was there for, like, 7 or 8 days or something, so, like, you know, the majority of the book does not focus on conversion therapy, which is fine. Like, that's not inherently a bad thing. It's just, like, not what I was expecting. And I was kind of, like, looking for the conversion therapy, and there was, like, way less of that than I was really looking for. But, like, his writing style was, like, unnecessary. Like, he just described certain things, like, in such flowery ways, and it's like, that really did not need to be described at all, like, let alone, like, in 3 sentences. It's super flowery, and I don't know, it wasn't bad, it was just, like, my next audiobook is going to be Redefining Realness by Janet Mock, which is a memoir of her. I don't really know who she is. I just looked up transgender books because, like, A, I haven't hit that goal for reading enough trans authors, and B, I am looking for nonfiction books to listen to as audiobooks, and that one came up, so I was like, sure, we'll read it. I don't know. I figure, like, it can't be but so bad, and listening to it on audiobook, like, even if something would annoy me more in, like, physical book, I feel like it annoys me less in audiobook, just because, like, I don't comprehend as much. I don't know. We'll see how that one is. I literally have no idea who she is, so, like, we'll see. I'm also trying desperately to read The Witcher. I've made small amounts of progress. I fell asleep reading it last night. I got like 3 pages and then just like passed out with the book open. And I tried reading it on my lunch break today, but again got like 3 pages and just like I had to go back in. And it's just like, I am trying, but it's so bad. I hate it so much. Like, I don't understand why people like this book. I hate the writing style. And, like, I'm willing to admit that, like, part of that could very much be the translator. Because, like, it's translated. So, like, I have no idea what his writing style sounds like in his native Polish, I believe. I need to check that. But I just don't know. Like, it might be a terrible translation. And I know that I've heard that the later translators are better, potentially. We'll see. But, like, part of it is just, like, half of this book so far. I mean, like, you know, I'm on, like, the 3rd chapter. It's, like, telling stories. They're like, here, let's talk about a thing for, like, 20 pages. And I'm like, this is boring. I'm bored. Like, stop talking about stuff and, like, go do stuff. And it's also, like, really sexist. At one point they were talking about, like, they were like, oh, these babies that were born, these young girls, they were born, like, after the eclipse or around the eclipse. And they were like, these girls show, like, I don't know, an aptitude for, like, cruelty and, like, dishonesty and terror. And the Geralt, the main character, is just like, oh, that's just all women. I'm like, thanks, Geralt. That's lovely. Feel free to go die in a hole. But, like, it's just, like, there's nothing about this book that appeals to me. And I already committed to read the first couple. I want to read, I think that the first 2 are short stories, and then there's the novel, and I want to read at least 2 of the first novel, just to see. But, like, oh, it's just, I don't understand. Like, people like this book, but I just don't understand. And I'm, like, 50 pages into Ready Player One, and I'm waiting for Flora to catch up to me on that, and I don't love that either. It's just, like, oh my god, my boyfriend was sending me texts about it because he's read it, and he was like sending me texts of the member berries from like South Park, which like I have no reference for because I've never seen South Park, but like that's like the most accurate description of this book. It's just like, hey, look, the 80s thing, hey, it's John Hughes, look, it's John Hughes, guys, oh look, it's Donkey Kong. And it's just like, oh my god, stop. Like, I get it, the 80s existed, can we just like focus on the story here? And like, oh, I mean, it's not that bad. Like, it's really, I don't hate Ready Player One. It's just like, so much just like, hey, look, it's an 80s thing, guys. Look, it's the 80s. And I'm like, yeah, I get it. It's the 80s. That thing existed in the 80s. I don't know. I'm gonna read something good eventually. I will. Just not right now. Give me like a week. Maybe like 3 to finish The Witcher, honestly. Judging at the pace I'm reading now. But like, I will find something lovely to read. I have The Fortress by somebody that looked really interesting and weird and not entirely my thing. So I might read that soon. That's kind of like what I want to read right now, honestly. I just can't because I've got too many things that I like need to get through, like The Witcher. Like, this needs to be done. I'm tired of reading this. I'm tired of talking about this. I just want it to be over so that I can just be like, hey, I read that thing. It sucked. But yeah, that's where I'm at.
I somehow always manage to park in the worst places for lighting, but that's okay. It is a day of the week, I'm sure. I don't know which one it is. There's that. Reading updates. Redefining Realness is definitely like the standout book at the moment. Like, I was listening to it the other day at work and it was really good. I had to like force myself to stop listening to it because otherwise I wouldn't have enough left to listen to for my overnight shift, which is tonight. So like, yeah, it's really good. It's really interesting. I'm so easy. I just like memoirs because I really like hearing about other people's lives, and it's just like interesting. And I don't know, she's a good storyteller and she had an interesting life, and I'd highly recommend it because like I really just want to listen to more of that. The Witcher I have made substantial progress on. I'm now like halfway through, thank God, because it's going forever. I did not know that it was fairy tale retellings. Like, not the whole series, I'm sure, but like The Last Wish is just like fairy tale retellings, which I didn't know and I didn't expect, and like I don't know that I've heard anyone say that, which is weird. I don't know. I'm not the biggest fan of fairy tale retellings. Like, there are definitely good ones, but it's not something that like inherently draws me to a story. It's just, I don't know, it's not something that really appeals to me. So like that's another added benefit of that book. And Transgender History, which I am reading more of. It's just going like very, very slowly because it is so like academic sounding and it sounds more like a textbook than anything else. I don't know. There's some weird things in that book that just like don't feel right. It was published in 2008, and maybe that has something to do with it, but it's like the way she talks about non-binary people is a little bit like like she talked about them not wanting to use the word transgender because it was old-fashioned, and I was like, I don't think that's exactly the reason why. Like, I think it's just because non-binary and transgender are two different things. And I don't know, like maybe she just like wasn't getting into that, and like she was just trying to like briefly sum it up because this book is more about like transgender people. And then she was talking about she defined bisexuality as being attracted to both genders and the gender within the gender binary, and I was like, oh, we don't, that's not what we do anymore. Like, that's not how bisexuality is defined anymore. But I don't know, I'm still in just the defining terms part of the book, which is just boring, and it's mostly talking about stuff that I already know or I've already picked up on, just like of being aware in the 21st century. I don't know, they're just, but apart from like a few questionable things, it is just like interesting, I guess. It's important, it's good information to have. I really don't know. It's fine, basically. I'm hoping it gets better once it gets into like the actual history part, and not just like, this is what gender queer means, this is what sexuality means, this is what transgender means, this is what all these other terms mean. And it's like, okay, I kind of knew this already. Like, when do we get to the part where it's actually like worthwhile? I don't know, but like, we'll see. I'm just hoping it gets better at this point, and hoping I can get through The Witcher. And Redefining Realness I will probably finish tomorrow, just because it's good. Like, it's really good. That's like so far my favorite read of the month by far. It's the only one that's like even close to getting 4 stars.
I finished The Last Wish yesterday. That's probably the accomplishment of the year at this point. That book was a struggle. I gave it 2 stars. I do plan to continue on the series just because I did commit to reading the first 3, I think, books. like up to the first novel, and if I still hate it at that point, then I can stop reading it. But I do want to like actually give it a try. The next collection of short stories has a different translator, so maybe that'll help some of my issues with the writing style, but also like it clearly wasn't just the writing, it clearly wasn't just the translation, although that might have been like part of it, but like the stories were just like dialogue, like just like straight dialogue for just like pages and pages. They'd just be talking about things and nothing else would happen, and like the story was the dialogue, and oh, it's so frustrating, and it's so sexist. I don't know if I talked about how sexist it was on here, but I kind of was like ranting on Twitter about it. I don't know, there was like, he kept going on about like the ugly women, and like the ugly women had to become sorceresses because no one would marry them, and then they made themselves beautiful because they had magic, and then they still had the eyes, the cold, angry eyes of ugly girls. And I was like, okay, there's a lot to unpack there, and I just don't have the energy, but that's garbage. Among other things, that was a rough book, but it's over, and I'm quite pleased, and I am not continuing on yet. I'm gonna give myself a break from that, because I just, having that hanging over me for like the last 4 months was vaguely stressful, and it's nice that it's no longer there. At work today, I also finished, this morning, last night, I don't know, time, I also finished, what was it called? Redefining Realness by Janet Mock, which is her memoir. It's basically about her being trans, a lot of it, and like she transitioned very young, and I don't know, it was interesting. It was really good. I gave it 4 stars. Definitely like the best thing I've read so far this month. I would kind of put it in the same category as Educated as to my feelings on it, just because like I really enjoyed it while I was reading it. It's really worthwhile. I'd highly recommend it, but I don't know how long I'm going to think about it, you know, like definitely a great book that I'm so glad that I actually like randomly came across and read, but I don't know that it's one that will stick with me for a long period of time. Which isn't bad. Like, not every book needs to have, like, a great lasting impact. But I do think it was really, really good. Really worthwhile. And it was just, like, it was nice to listen to something that I actively cared about. It was just, like, oh, it was so good. Because she had an interesting story. And she had things to say. And she was a good storyteller. And when you put those 3 things together, it's just, like, it's gonna be a good memoir. And I did really, really enjoy that one. So I'm actually down to 4 books on my currently reading on Goodreads, which is fairly impressive, I think, but also like it's kind of fake just because I do plan on starting 2 new books in like the next day or 2, just because I need a new audiobook, and since Ready Player One is what I'm working on right now, and I'm only doing 50 pages of that at a time, I want to have another book going, so I don't know what I'm going to start yet, but I will decide that soon, but I'm rather pleased. It feels good not to have The Witcher hanging over me anymore, because that was just like constantly stressful, and it was something that I was thinking about and I was feeling guilty about, and now it's just done, and like I don't have to read that garbage anymore. I mean, I do, but like not The Last Wish, just like whatever the next one is, Sword of Destiny or whatever. I don't know. Maybe it'll be better with a different translator. Maybe it'll be less sexist. Maybe it'll be less boring. Oh, those short stories, like, I can complain about the sexism or the writing that I hated, but it was just, like, boring. Like, I can only remember 1 of those short stories, and that's mostly just because it was a Snow White retelling. I like the Snow White, I like that one okay. I'm not a huge fan of retellings, but, like, the Snow White one was, like, it wasn't necessarily doing anything new or interesting that I hadn't seen before in a Snow White retelling, but it was still just, like, nice. I kind of liked it. Not like love, but it was like a good 3-star, like a worthwhile to read 3-star. So yeah, I don't know, I'm done. I'm still reveling in the fact that I'm done and I don't have to read that book anymore ever again, and oh, it feels good. It feels very, very good. So today was library day. Still not going very much, but like I have gone a couple of times, and I do kind of feel comfortable going in to like grab a quick book, because they do seem pretty good with their system, and there are never many people in there, and like I never have to like avoid people the way I do like everywhere else, and they take everyone's temperature when you go in, which is like nice, and they actually like enforce the mask, which is more than I can say for literally anywhere else, including my job. But I had to return The Silent Wife by Karin Slaughter because that's due tomorrow, but like I didn't really feel like moving tomorrow, so I came today. And I had a book that came in from on hold because I did schedule a hold for like the middle of October, and that is Pretty Girls by Karin Slaughter, because just reading The Silent Wife reminded me how much I do enjoy her, and I appreciate reading her books. And this is honestly kind of shorter than I expected it to be, but this is the one people talk about the most, and I genuinely have no idea what it's about, but like everyone seems to talk about it, and most people, I've seen a few negative reviews, but most people seem to thoroughly enjoy it and talk about how like horrific it is, which like I've read Karin Slaughter's stuff, so like I'm kind of prepared for that. But yeah, I'm just like, this is kind of like the biggest one I feel like the people talk about. Like people talk about The Good Daughter, I think it was, quite a bit, but like I feel like this one is kind of like her big, everyone knows this, everyone reads this. This is the Karin Slaughter book. So this is, I think, the last one of hers I have to read apart from the Grant County series, which will probably be a next year project just because that's too many books for me to read from the library this year if I'm also trying to actually hit any of my goals. But I'm very excited for this. I don't really expect it to take me more than like a day or two to get through. Probably not quite yet because I am still working on The Fortress by S.A. somebody, which I don't actually think I've talked about in the vlog, but I'll talk about that tomorrow because I don't feel like getting into that now. And Ready Player One, which I'm still reading. And I don't have an audiobook going right now. And I'm still reading Transgender History, but it's not, I don't know. I'm still just in the terms section. Like, it feels like it goes on forever and it's just boring because it's just like defining things and I don't know. But this I am very, very excited for and hopefully we'll read soon.
It's been a week since I updated. Like, literally, my last update was last Friday when I went to the library. And today is Friday. Just a different Friday. I don't know why I haven't been updating. I think it's just because I got the ring light. So now I feel like obligated to use the ring light. Must you eat? As soon as I start filming. I got the ring light. And now it's like, I feel obligated to use it, but I'm just perpetually too lazy to set it up. So, yeah, I just have to get into the habit of that. Or, like, find somewhere to leave it that's, like, a good filming spot, you know? Because, like, right now it's piled on, like, 3 different stacks of books that are 3 different heights. And it's all just a little bit of an unfortunate setup, so I can actually leave it there. And I'm just, like, sitting on my bed because I don't know where else to film. I read Pretty Girls, which is here. I actually like brought in the stack of books to talk about. I read this, I picked it up from the library and literally read it in 24 hours because I was just like, I'm gonna read this. Like, I'm just gonna read this. And I did. It was good. I don't know. I give it 4 stars. I don't think it's my favorite Karin Slaughter book. Although whenever I give a thriller book 4 stars, I want to add like the little asterisk caveat that I've never given a thriller 5 stars. So like 4 stars is not a bad thriller rating from me. Like 4 stars is pretty much as good as it gets. Like I'm sure there is a 5-star thriller for me out there somewhere. I love thrillers, but I've not read one yet. But I gave this 4 stars. I just don't think it's my favorite Karin Slaughter book. Like I think the hype may have ruined it a little for me. I don't know. I don't think it was all the hype. I was expecting something a little different, a little better, maybe a little like more unique. I don't know. I like her cop books better. And I felt this before with her other books that aren't like cop series. Well, I've only read one of her cop series to be perfectly honest, but I love that series and I think it's so well done. Like in general, it obviously, it's like a 10-book series at this point. It obviously has books I don't love. Hello. Where are you? Oh, you missed her completely. Like, that series obviously has books I don't love, but this just felt like a lot of this book was kind of like me waiting for it to get good, you know? Like, it had, like, good moments, and I was always, like, waiting for those good moments again. And, you know, in a really great book, I'm not waiting for the good moments, because the whole thing is good. And this was just, like, I felt like I kept, like, there were definitely a lot of good moments scattered throughout, but it was just, like, I kept waiting for them. And everyone talks about how gruesome and violent this book is, and like, it is, don't get me wrong, but like, I feel like she has other books that are more gruesome and violent. Like, the last Will Trent book I read, The Silent Wife, I think it was way more gruesome than this was. And it was just like, I don't know, I was expecting this to be, like, more over the top in that regard, and it was definitely bad. Like, there's a lot of rape and murder and torture in this book. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying there's not, but, like, comparatively, I guess we're speaking, like, relative to the books I've read by her, this was kind of, like, not one of the most bad in that regard. Although, not like, bad isn't unenjoyable, but, like, I don't know. It was a good book. It was a fine book. This won't, like, make my favorites for the year or anything, or, like, my honorable mentions or whatever I do this year, since I'm apparently not going to have any 5-star reads. But I did like it. I think it's a good book by her. I think Karin Slaughter, at her worst, is better than so many other thriller writers at their best. And this was definitely, like, not at her worst. But I can also see how people give this, like, 3 stars and they're, like, kind of mediocre, because, like, I kind of felt that. Like, it was just, I don't know. Like, I just expected it to be a little bit better and a little bit more enjoyable and a little bit more fun and a little bit more, like, compelling. And, like, it was all of those things. It's just, like, I expected a little bit more than what it was. And it was, like, a good thriller, but nothing that, like, if I read this book by another author, I'd be like, yeah, that was a good book, but it wouldn't compel me to pick up more by her. And yeah, I don't know. It was good. I'm glad I finally read it. I'm more excited to read her other cop series, because she has the Grant County series, which is kind of a precursor to the Wiltron series, which I love. And I think I'm most excited to read that, because I do think I'll enjoy those more than this one. I just think her cop books in general are better. So, I don't know. Just personal taste. I think I just like cop books more. And I like them when the cops are, like, not good people. Like, it's not, like, cop propaganda, like it feels like a lot of cop stuff is. It's just like, hey, these cops are all terrible human beings. Let's follow them as they solve crimes. And it's like, okay, I'm down. But this one was good. Like, I would recommend it, like, especially if you don't enjoy cop thrillers as much. Like, if you enjoy other thrillers, you might like it more, but it was a little bit like, really good, but, like, not my favorite, which, I don't know. I don't know why I had to spend 5 minutes just being like, hey, that was a really good book, but not my favorite. I don't have an audiobook going right now, actually. I haven't in, like, a week and a half. I didn't have an overnight shift this week, and there wasn't really anything I was dying to read, and I'm kind of, like, not caring, really? I don't know. I just didn't feel like listening to one now, and if I don't have my overnight, I don't feel like I need to listen to one, like, because my overnight is, like, 6 hours where I have nothing to listen to, so an audiobook is, like, kind of a requirement, almost. But when I don't have my overnight, I'm just, like, I don't know, I just decided not to start one, so I'm not listening to anything right now, but, like, I work an overnight Tuesday night, so I definitely need to find something to read. And I've been making some progress on Transgender History by Susan Stryker, and I finally got through the first chapter, which is all the terms and definitions, and, like, oh god, that was boring, and I probably should have just skimmed it, because, like, it was all repeat information for me anyway. So I'm actually into, like, the history part, and not just the terminology, and that is more interesting. It's still, like, very academic written and kind of dry and, like, not my favorite, but, it's not bad, and it is more interesting, and it's just, and it feels more like a brief overview, and I think I was expecting a little bit more, like, in-depth focus. I don't know, maybe I'm still only in, like, the beginning, since, like, the first, 100 pages of this book was just the terminology, but I don't know, I feel like that's probably going to be, like, 3 stars, like, one of those, like, I didn't really enjoy this, but it was worthwhile information to have, so I don't know, we'll see. I'm still only, like, a quarter of the way into it. And then, the other 2 things I'm reading. Ready Player One, which I've talked about, and don't really have anything more to add. I have to read another 50 pages to catch up with Floor, or I don't know if she's read them yet, but we both need to read those 50 pages. It's fine. There is a lot of, like, waiting in that book. Just, like, the story is interesting. Like, I find the, like, video game scavenger hunt compelling in a way, although I have mentioned before that I'm not the biggest fan of scavenger hunt books. Like, the 4th Harry Potter book was always, like, one of my least favorites just for that reason. Like, if it's, like, a tournament style book, or, like, a game book, or a scavenger hunt book, or, like, we're completing all the items on this list book, or, like a bucket list or whatever, like, books with those plots or storylines, narratives, always just feel, like, a little bit formulaic for me. But I do find the story in the book compelling. It's just, it feels like there's a lot of like, hey, let's sit here for 5 pages while he references things that existed in the 80s and don't really have any bearing on the story. He's just listing them. Or like, let's go deeply into Halliday's, I think that's his name, backstory and like what his history was and what the company's history was. And I'm like, I don't really care. Can we just like go find the little keys that he's looking for in this virtual reality, please? But it's fine. I think it should probably get better as it goes along, but we'll see. And then the final thing, which I feel like I've meant to talk about on here because I've been reading it for a minute. Oh, my hand is slipping. I shouldn't have put on lotion right before I decided to hold up a camera for like 10 minutes. The final thing that I'm reading is The Fortress by S.A. Jones. I should have checked that before I looked at it. This I got for my birthday. I found someone who gets me surprise books for my birthday, which is lovely because everyone else is too afraid to. I had not heard of this before, and it is a dystopian, kind of like a little bit, it's been like compared to The Handmaid's Tale, which I feel like is unfair because I feel like any dystopian that focuses on like the dystopic element is like sexism related gets compared to The Handmaid's Tale when there's like really not much in common. But essentially they live in this world that is the future, but it's very similar to our world. However, there is this place called the Fortress, which is a very big area. It's not like a single fortress, it's like a city essentially. You know, like it's like a very large area with lots of people living there that is female dominated. Like only women live there, but they allow men to come in temporarily as like indentured servants basically. And the rules are, they have 3 roles, the men who go there, and some of them are there because they're criminals and some are there because they volunteered to, or they're doing like their required like civil service or military service there. They have 3 roles. They can't ask any questions. What was the other rules? They have to accept any command given by a woman who lives there, from like a small child to like the most powerful woman there. And they have to have sex. They're not allowed to say no to sex to any of the women. Like I think they can to any of the other men, because the men have no power there. I don't know, it's weird. It's compelling, it's interesting, I like it, but I don't know. There's so much sex in this book that it makes me really uncomfortable to read, actually. Like, really graphic sex, like, and not, like, occasionally. It's just, like, there will be, like, a 1.5-page long scene that's just, like, basically pornographic. And it's not that I'm, like, a prude who's like, oh, like, that's inappropriate for a book, I don't want to read that. It's not that. I'm fine with that existing. It's just, it makes me intensely uncomfortable, just like subjectively. Like, and I get that that's totally my thing. And it's just, I really am interested in the story because it's just about this man who like cheated on his wife a lot and was like a higher up in a company where they like, they basically like all had sex with the interns and like were really sexist and whatever. And his wife was like, you go there for a year or I'm leaving you and taking our unborn child. So he's there, and it's just like, it's interesting, and I kind of like what she's exploring. I'm not far enough in to be like, if I think it's like really good or not, but it is compelling, and it's just like, there's just so much explicit sex that I'm always just like, oh, maybe I'll pick up something else instead. So it's taking me a minute. But I don't know. I just have to like make myself read it, and then I get to like, and I'll enjoy it, and I'll get to a sex scene, and I'll just be like, oh, I want to take a break now. And it's hard. It's hard to get through because it's like that's not like a bad aspect of the book. It's just like, because I'm so uncomfortable, I'm like, oh god, like I can't sit through like another scene like that. And I don't know. But it is good. I am liking it. I do just need to keep reading it because it's so easy to just be like, oh, maybe not, maybe, because I know I'm gonna like cringe. And it's just those scenes, and it's like, there's nothing wrong with them, and that's like the point of the book, is that it's very like sex focused. It's just like, oh, it makes me so uncomfortable, but I do like it. Like, it's just, it's a little bit hard to read. So that's what I've been reading. I should really just update like every day or two instead of like once a week and having like 10 minutes where I just sit here and give you all these updates. Instead, I could just have like one update a day on like each of these books, but you know, that's clearly not how I roll.
I dropped off some books at the library just now, which means I have nothing checked out from the library, which is pretty chill. I'm pleased about that. I do think at some point before the end of the year I would like to check out Dubliners by James Joyce, because I have technically been in the middle of that for like a year and a half at this point, and I did enjoy it. I just need to go back to it, and it would be nice to finish that by the end of the year, and also finish the Erik Larson book so that I can have like kind of a clean slate, not have anything that I've just been intending to get to for months and months and months. But honestly, that'll probably be the only thing I check out physically from the library for the rest of the year, just because like there's nothing that I'm really dying for beyond that. Yeah, I have also started the next Witcher book. I think it's called Sword of Destiny. I'm not very far in because I keep just like trying to read it before bed and then falling asleep. But so far nothing's really happened. The Witcher killed a basilisk off screen, and there are a couple of female characters who were introduced, and they're all watching their figures, as you know, all proper women should do. Good to know that hasn't changed. I do like the writing style of it better though. Like, not anything about the story, but just like the writing itself, I think I enjoy a little more because there's a different translator. So there's that. I did start an audiobook. I started Bridge of Spies. I have no idea who wrote it. Just kind of randomly because I needed an audiobook, and the ones that I had on my wish list at the library were all checked out. So I just kind of started that, and I got 2 hours in and realized like I wasn't retaining any of the information at all, and I was so bored and like couldn't concentrate, and I honestly like can't tell how much of that is like the book itself versus the audiobook experience for me. So I'm just DNFing it. Normally I'd be like, oh well, I'm gonna like go read the physical copy now and like see if I enjoy it more, because it is like Bridge of Spies is about like spies during the Cold War, and that sounds like theoretically very fascinating to me, but it's just like I have no interest in that book, honestly. Like, after having listened to like 2 hours of it, I can't tell you anything about it, and I just don't really care or have any interest, or just like I have no desire to read a physical copy. I might at some point in the future, but like as it stands now, I'm just DNFing that. I'm not planning to go back to it. So instead of listening to that last night on my overnight, I decided to listen to Call the Midwife by Jennifer Worth, I believe. And I'm about halfway through that now. You know, you get through a lot when you can listen to something for like 7 straight hours. That's pretty good. I do quite like it. There's a lot of childbirth in it, obviously, because she's a midwife, which is, you know, vaguely horrifying to me and kind of disgusting to read. But like beyond that, it's very interesting. I do find that with that book, I like the case studies a lot more. Like, the case studies to me are very, very interesting. But when she starts talking about like her personal life and the things she was doing, I don't care, which is weird, because normally I'm like all down for that in memoirs. But for this, is kind of like when she's not talking about the actual patients, I'm a little bit disinterested. But I don't know. Maybe that'll change. Or like, she doesn't talk about her personal life very much outside of like what directly relates to her patients. So it's pretty good. Like, I am interested. I do actually plan to like, it's a series, a trilogy, I think. So I do kind of plan to listen to all 3 books, because like the first one is solid. So like, sure, I'll listen to more. There's some questionable things in it. Just like, she's older. Like, it's her memoir of her time in like the 50s being a midwife, so like there are definitely like some questionable things. Like, she talks about like, oh, like civilization versus like the uncivilized world, which is like, oh, that we don't do that anymore. And like there's one couple she talks about, and she's like, oh yeah, he went off to war and then brought home his bride, who was this 11-year-old, and I'm like, what? And she's talking about how in love they are, and like, I mean, they're in like their like 40s and 50s now, but like, it's like, okay, she was 11 at the time, she had several children with him before she was 16. That's rape. Like, and she just talks about how in love they are because they can't speak the same language, and I'm just like, that is horrible to read. But just in general, it is just like very interesting. Like, lots of stuff I don't know about, like a time period I don't read. I mean, like, I don't think I've ever read a book about the 50s set in England, so that's interesting, I guess. And like definitely like a lot of interesting medical history, because she talks about like how things had changed prior to her becoming a midwife, and like the things in like the 19th century that changed in midwifery. And it's like interesting, like it's very interesting. So like I am glad I started that, because that is an audiobook where I'm like, I feel like I'm gaining something from listening to this. Or British Spies, it was like theoretically all that information should be fascinating to me, like all like, I don't want to call the Cold War petty dramas, but like the spying itself seemed like petty dramas, because like the spies they were talking about in the book, at least, like because they weren't like doing anything, they weren't like having any like interesting information to pass along. It was all like basic stuff, and like it should have been interesting, and I just wasn't. And it might have just been that it was like too much information for me to like comprehend for an audiobook. I don't know, but that was kind of a disappointment. But Call the Midwife is like actually really good, which I'm not surprised, because I have heard several people talk about how good those books are. But I am glad, because I don't think that's the kind of book, I wanted to read it, but I don't think that's the kind of book I ever would have really made time for. But now I get to listen to all three, so yay. I finished Call the Midwife. I finished listening to that the other day, and it was good. 4 stars. Like, I'm not continuing on in the series, but that's only because my library doesn't have the audiobooks, which is annoying. I thought they did. And they only had the audiobook for the first one, so I don't think I liked it enough to bother like spending actual like physical reading time on it, because like I'm usually pretty short on like audiobooks to listen to, so I'm like down to just kind of go for something random that's like interesting but not my favorite thing. But I don't know, I'm not interested enough to read more of the series, especially because it ended on like a very religious note, which is not a bad thing, but it kind of leaves me inclined to believe that the other 2 books are going to be slightly more religious than this one, and it makes me even less interested. But it was a good book. It did have like some weird things. Like I liked it most when it was talking about her patients, because like that is 2/3 of the book probably. I found that really interesting, just like the medicine at the time and just the social standards and like how people lived and like what they were going through for childbirth, and like a lot of like discussion on like sexism and feminism and etc., you know, as it's mainly focused on women of childbearing age. There were some bits that were like less focused on like midwifery. They were like either about the author's personal life or just like the nuns at the convent where she worked, or like random things. Like there was one about pigs mating, and it was just like, why? Like I don't care that you're breeding pigs, I'm interested in midwifery. But I don't know, apart from like those random things, and like she had a bit of a condescending tone at times, and which was ironic because like she spent one passage talking about how everyone liked this one nun in particular because she didn't have a condescending approach to the working class people that she was, you know, helping. Like it was, you know, charity work, but she didn't like treat them in a very condescending, like, oh, I'm saving you sort of way. And I just found it kind of ironic that the author had a bit of that tone throughout this book. Like not horribly so, like it definitely wasn't like a major feature, and she did a good job of like treating them like humans and not like projects. But she definitely hit that condescending tone at times. So I don't know, I would recommend it if you're interested in it, because I do think despite the weird bits and like the random things thrown in that I didn't have much interest in, it was really worthwhile and interesting. And the other thing that I'm reading a lot of right now is The Will of the Empress, which I am reading for the rereadathon, so I have a whole vlog on that, which is why I haven't really talked about this one much. Really liking it. I'm making decent progress. I'm more than halfway through at this point, which is good because I only have like 2 or 3 days left to read this, depending on what day of the month it is. I'm not sure. I love it though. It's like, it's as good as I remember it. Just a lot of interesting things, a lot of political intrigue, a lot of like interesting characters dealing with trauma in their past, and like relationships, and like found family coming back together after they've been separated. And it's lovely. I really like this this book. The series is like okay overall, but I do so love this book. And that's probably gonna be it for like the month. Like I might update with whatever I start next, but I feel like this is gonna take me another minute because like I do like it and I do read it fairly quickly. It's just I am very busy with work, so there's only so much reading I can get done on like my lunch break. But I'm hoping to finish this up soon, at least by the end of the month, and maybe start something else in October, but I doubt I'll get anything else, like, make much progress on anything else, because I am still reading slow. I need to read more of The Witcher. I forgot about The Witcher. I'm supposed to be reading that. Oh, well. I don't want that to be, like, the last wish again. Which one am I reading? Sword of Destiny? I don't remember if it's plural or not. I think I got, like, 10 or 15 pages into the first chapter before I just like put it down because I was falling asleep and then never picked it up again because I still don't like it. I should keep working on that instead of starting something new. Oh well. We'll see how that goes. So today is November 4th, but I did want to wrap up my October vlog before I started the November one. Mostly just because it would bother me to just in the October one with here's what I'm doing and I'll check in later and then just not check in. So I did finish The Will of the Empress basically like as soon as I filmed that clip. I just like went home and read the last like 200 pages. I forgot that the last 200 pages are all like very, I'm gonna say like action heavy, but like kind of action heavy. They're just kind of like the climax happens and then doesn't stop happening for the rest of the book. That's pretty much like it. So you kind of, I mean, you can put it down, but like I'm not that kind of person. So I finished that, and then I needed an audiobook to read. So not an audiobook, an ebook. I needed an ebook to read because I was not at home and didn't have any books with me. So I downloaded My Dark Vanessa by somebody, I really don't remember who. I heard people talking about this a couple years ago when it came out. I think Carla from Carla's Book Bits, especially. I don't remember her channel name, but Carla talked about it, and I saw her Goodreads review on it, and it sounded very interesting and sounded very up my alley. So I read that, and I pretty much devoured that instantly. 4 stars. Like, I did have some issues. It's about an abusive sexual relationship between a student and her teacher. She's 15 at the time it starts, and like it continues up through her like adulthood on and off in kind of various ways. And I think my one issue, which is kind of an issue, kind of not, the abuse was very generic. I don't know how to like say this in a way that makes it sound not incredibly negative. But it was like, it followed the script of like grooming and abuse in that kind of situation, like very stereotypically so. And I don't want to say that's inaccurate to real life because it's 100% not. And like, there's a reason abusers follow that script. And I'm not like knocking it for that reason, but because it is following that very typical script in a way. And I'm talking about literally just the abuse aspect and the way the teacher treated his student. I'm not talking about like the rest of the story or anything, any other character development. I'm talking about literally just the abuse and the way it developed. It was just very much that play-by-play, this is like the very stereotypical, this is what happens, this is what they say. And like there's a reason abusers use those lines, it's because they work. And I'm not saying it's unrealistic at all, because that kind of thing 100% happens in exactly that kind of way all the time. Like, it was just like reading it and reading kind of like this script that I've seen, 100 times before in, real life situations and fiction situations. It was just like a little bit of a drag, kind of. Like, it dragged the book down a little bit for me, because it was very much just like, you knew the script, like that kind of script, but like the book was really interesting and like really good. And I don't want to like complain too much about that, because it's kind of a weird complaint, because I don't think it's necessarily a negative. Like, I think it is realistic in that regard, and like you can't knock it for being realistic, but also like realism doesn't always make the most interesting story for every reader. And I think I did have just like, I think that knocked my enjoyment down, even if I don't think it changed the overall quality of the book. It was just like, it changed my enjoyment level, I think. That's what I'm trying to say. But it was a really good book. Like, if you're interested in reading that kind of thing, I think it was really well done, because it's from the point of view of the student, and she very much romanticizes her relationship. She's like, I wasn't abused, like, I was there, I was consenting, I was in love with him, and I'm very happy that, like, we had our relationship. And it's like dealing with her trauma, like, both at 15 and at, like, in her 20s and 30s, like, as she's dealing with it, is really interesting. And I would recommend if you're interested in that kind of thing. Like, obviously very, very difficult to read, very graphic, but, like, I think a really good book. And I do want to look up more from that author, if she has any more, because, I don't know, that book was good, and it was the kind of book where I just, like, read it and then didn't stop reading it, and it was just, like, so intrinsically my kind of thing that I was very happy with it. I'm listening to another audiobook now. I don't remember what it's called. Something about the day that disappeared, or the day that vanished, or the day that was forgotten. It's some British dude who, when he was 11, his 9-year-old brother drowned, and his parents basically, like, ignored it. I mean, they didn't, like, ignore it, you know, but they were kind of like, okay, the best way to handle this grief is to move on and kind of, like, continue on with our lives in a very forward trajectory and, like, not talk about it a lot. And it's kind of him as an adult dealing with it and trying to figure out what happened, because, you know, he was 11 and no one's talked about it, so, like, no one really remembers it super clearly. Like, a lot of them don't know, like, the actual date that he died, or, like, they don't know the whole situation, because they never, like, sat down and talked about it, and never, like, it reinforced each other's stories in a way. So it's kind of interesting, but also, like, kind of boring, and it's a little bit self-indulgent, like, not in a negative way, just, like, I can see how writing this book was very, like, beneficial for him as a person, but as a reader, it doesn't do anything for me. It's just kind of like, okay, sure, like, this kid drowned, and, like, that's very sad, but also there's not a whole lot there for me. Like, I'm not getting anything out of the book. It's not bad. It was just, I thought it would be more, like, introspective. And it's really more just, like, he's trying to figure out what happened. And what happened is they were at the ocean, and he and his brother were swimming, and his brother drowned because it's the ocean, and he was 9, and the adults weren't paying super close attention. And it's like, he can go through and, like, find all the little details in everyone's specific memories. But, like, at the end of the day, that's what happened. We knew from the beginning that that's what happened. And it's like, I don't know. There's not a whole lot there for a reader, I don't think. I can't imagine there are many people who would find this book particularly fascinating unless they relate to it a whole lot. But yeah, I don't know. I'll finish it. It's fine. It's probably gonna be like a 3-star, like, I'm never gonna think about this again, but it wasn't bad kind of book. I don't know what else I'm reading. Oh, The Red Lotus by Chris Bohjalian? I have no idea. I got an ARC from my old job months and months ago. I mean, I haven't worked there in, like, 8 months or something, so, like, long time ago. It's been out for a very long time now. I don't know. I don't really like it. I'm, like, 150 pages in or something, so I should have thoughts, but I'm just like, why? Like, why does this book exist? Why does this story exist? Why is this story being told? Like, and it just, I think he's supposed to be a well-known author. I need to look into him, but, like, I've not heard of him before. But, like, I think allegedly he's a well-known author, very popular or something, but it comes across as, like, very amateurish. And, like, if someone handed it to me and told me that was, like, a self-published book, I would believe them. You know, it's that kind of, like, I don't know. And not to say self-published books are bad. That's, like, a bad stereotype, I know. But it is kind of, like, the vibe I get from that. And I don't know. I don't love it. But I'm gonna finish it. One thing happened early on in the book that I wasn't expecting to happen until later, so that's kind of interesting. So that, like, I don't want to talk specifics because, like, spoilers and all that, but, like, they're going to be dealing with the fallout of that instead of, like, building up to it for the entire book, which is interesting because I do kind of prefer when books deal with the fallout of events rather than just the build up to those events. But yeah, that's what I'm reading. I probably should have just made this the start of next month's vlog, because it's just a very long update, but whatever, it's on last month's. I'm sorry this vlog was so long. I assume it's long. I don't even know at this point. they're always long, so I need to stop doing month-long vlogs at some point, but I'm just like too tired from work to like ever edit them, so like once a month is about all I can manage for editing. Like, I swear I've worked, in the last week, I've worked 4 shifts that were longer than 11 hours, so like, that's where my life is at right now. I don't do anything when I get home. I kind of just like collapse on either the floor or the sofa or the bed, whichever is closer. And then I just wait until I go in again. Yeah, I want to do NaNoWriMo in November, and I bought a notebook so I could handwrite it because I was getting the vibe that I wanted to handwrite it. And now I'm just like, I want to, but like I haven't had the energy to do anything other than just like the most basic existence. Like, I feed myself, I water myself, I sleep, and I work. And that's like it. Basically. I don't know. Like, I'm not. Oh, it's hard. Work is a lot right now. We need to hire more people, but no one wants to work there because it's a terrible job and they make us work 11-hour shifts. So, I don't know. I don't know what I'm talking about at this point. I'm just gonna go, leave y'all here. Thank you for watching if you managed to watch to the end of this vlog. Again, as always, I don't know why you would exactly watch this whole long thing, but thank you. I appreciate your watching. Yeah. See y'all again soon, I guess. And by soon, I mean next month when I post the November vlog, because, yeah, next month.